Grace Kids, I'm going to introduce you to a new fella today. And I hope you enjoy this lesson. But before I get to this new fella, I'm going to be telling you our verse for the next couple of lessons. It's Psalm 145 and verse 13. Thy kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and thy dominion endureth throughout all generations. Whose dominion, whose kingdom endures and is everlasting? Jesus's. Jesus' kingdom. Jesus is the King of Kings. Okay? What's our question for the next couple lessons? How is Jesus the perfect King? Jesus perfectly rules over the universe as the King of Kings. So that is our question. There's our verse. Our verse is something you can memorize so you can trust in the truth that's there. Jesus will endure for every generation and rule as the King of Kings. So David is the new fellow that we're going to be talking about today. And David was anointed. So God chose David to be king instead of Saul because Saul was full of disobedience. He's disobedient all the time. And partial disobedience and making excuses for his sin and all these things. I mean, he's doing the wrong thing. He's making sacrifices when the priests are supposed to be making sacrifices, and he excuses that. And there's just so many problems with his kingship. So God told him he's not going to have it anymore. God chose a new king, a better king that he chose. So God sent Samuel to Bethlehem to visit Jesse. Do you remember who Jesse is? Jesse is the son of Obed, whom we talked about back in Ruth. And Obed is the son of Boaz and Ruth. And so here we are seeing the connection going on down the line. And remember what I told you? That Obed, his son was Jesse, and Jesse's son was David. And David was going to be the king one day. And David was in the line of Jesus Christ. But as we get into this, he's told to go over to Jesse's house, and he's supposed to pick a king out of one of the sons of Jesse. And there's 8 sons there, and one of them's got to be the one. So he went down the line. The first one, he says, oh man, this guy's tall, he's handsome. I mean, he fits the bill on the outside. He should be all right. And Samuel says, this must be it. And God says, no, don't look at what's going on with the looks here. Don't look at the outside. He says, man sees the outside, but God sees the heart. He understands the heart. So he says, no. So one by one, they go down the line until Samuel says, I've been through all the sons here. Do you have any more, Jesse? And Jesse says, yeah, I've got one more. He's the youngest. He's out with the sheep. So he says, well, bring him on in. So he finally gets there. And God says, this is the guy. This is the one who's going to be king. So Samuel anoints David. And you say, what is that for? Well, that's the idea of setting them apart for it's a dedication to God. And so he anoints him as the future king. He's the chosen one. And so the Spirit of the Lord is with David. And then Samuel goes back home. So this is exciting. This is exciting for David, the youngest guy, the one that nobody would regularly choose. I mean, he's not the toughest, he's not the biggest, he's not the bravest. Or maybe he is. We get into the next story, and we see that the Philistines are attacking again. The Philistines, I mean, again, haven't we already dealt with them before? Well, we're dealing with them again. And they brought in their biggest, toughest guy that they could possibly find. And his name was what? What do you think? Goliath. He was huge. I mean, he was called a giant. 9 feet tall. Wow. It's almost as tall as all of the basketball hoops, okay? And so there's this guy that comes in and he says, hey, send your best guy in here. We'll fight one-on-one and we'll see who can win this. So, what do the Israelites do? Nothing. They are afraid. They're out of their wits of afraid of Goliath, right? And so Jesse tells David, hey, your brothers are on the battlefield. They're getting ready for battle. They need some food, so go ahead and take them some food. So David took the food over and sees Goliath and sees that he's taunting Israel, and he says, I'll fight him. Because David's fought lions and bears. I mean, he's as big as a bear, right? Maybe he could take him out. But it wasn't the matter of, David coming up, yeah, I'm good, I got muscles. No. David says, I'm trusting in God. He'll take care of it. He'll take care of him. I'm just going to go out and fight him. So Saul says, all right, I'll try to put my armor on you. And so he tries it, and too heavy. David could never move in that. And it just wouldn't work. So he goes out to the local stream, and he picks out 5 smooth stones. And he goes out before Goliath. And Goliath made fun of him. This young boy's coming out here to fight me. Come on, seriously, what's going on here? Makes fun of him. And David says, you come to fight with spear and sword, but I come to fight in the name of the Lord, and God always wins his battles. David wasn't confident in himself. He was confident in God, that God would win the fight. And so they got ready to go, and they went to battle, and David, and that stone came out of the slingshot and in the sling or out of it and hit him right in the forehead right here. Can you imagine how bad that would hurt? Boom. And guess what he does? Face plant in the dirt. Boom. Goliath is done. David kills him. Israel wins the day. Wait a minute. Let me take that back. God wins the day. David had trust in God that he'd get the job done. And he did. And so Israel was victorious because God was victorious over the Philistines. So you say, how does Christ connect to all of this? Christ connects in this way. See, David wasn't the looker. I mean, he wasn't the most muscular. He didn't have it all. And yet David was the one that was made king. And he went out to fight for Israel. God chose him, and he went out to fight for Israel. Jesus, he didn't look like a king either. He was born in a stable, placed in a manger. I mean, this is not where kings are born. And yet he was born to a humble family. I mean, there was no pomp and parade. I mean, there was no whoop whoop. It was just in a stable. So he didn't look like a king. And yet God chose him to fight for people. What? To conquer sin and death through his death and resurrection, to offer salvation to us. So have you been saved? That's a big question for you to be able to answer today. And I know I ask that every single time. That's so important. And if you are saved, listen, you can live for Jesus. I mean, if he's going to rule the universe for eternity, we better be living for him, right? We can and we want to live for him. So, what's our questions to wrap up this lesson here today? Well, where did God send Samuel to find the king? He sent him to Jesse's house in Bethlehem. And he ended up having to wait for the last boy to come in, the last son to come in, the one who was out watching the sheep. So, what else? People see what's on the outside. They see the exterior, okay? You see me, but yet, can you see my heart? No. Who sees your heart? God does. God looks at your heart. He sees what you actually believe. Okay? What you have faith in. He sees that. He sees what you think about. He sees what you love and don't like and all these things. God knows. Goliath taunted, and what was the response from David? David responded by saying, God's going to win this because he always wins his battles. He had total faith in God. Goliath just taunted him, right? So why is it important that God does see our heart? Because you know what? It's not on the basis of how we look that God sees us. It's based on, if we put our faith in Him, He sees that and He honors that with salvation if we have faith in Him. So I don't have to look a certain way, have a certain skin color, or be a certain height, or be a certain weight. God knows my heart, and that's what's important. How is David similar to Jesus? Well, David wasn't necessarily, he didn't look like a king, but God chose him, and he fought for his people. Same way that Jesus was chosen by God to come and to fight for people so that people could get saved. And he'd be the mediator between us and God. When we do get saved, He'll stand before us and say, hey, listen, I've covered him. He's covered by my death, burial, and resurrection. He's covered. I can't wait to be able to see God, because I don't have to have shame, because I'm covered by Jesus' blood. All right, and how are we like the Israelites in this case? Well, somebody had to go to fight for us, and that's Jesus. We need someone that we can have confidence in. Not in ourselves, but in our God. So what's our activity for today? Well, just think about it this way. Let's try to make some sort of a slingshot or something. Something that'll catapult a cotton ball across the room. How about that? So let's try this. You get a cup and you get a balloon, and you put the balloon over the cup to where you can pull the end, and then the elastic, once you release it, it'll pop up real quick. So you put a cotton ball in the cup with the balloon over the end, and you pull back and you release, and it should launch that cotton ball up in the air and see if you can knock anything over with it. I hope you enjoy that activity. I hope you enjoyed the lesson. Remember what God can do with anybody. You don't have to look it. You just have to have faith. So I hope you have a wonderful day. We'll talk to you later, Grace Kids.